Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Hey guys,
How are you?
welcome,
Hey, Brad.
Welcome to the world today.
How's your voice?
Oh, yeah, I got my radio voice on today.
Hey, Frog's gone.
Yeah, we were supposed to record a few days ago, and unfortunately, I got some allergies going through, and my voice was even deeper than this. But I'm back. I'm good. Everything's good.
Yeah, it's that time of year.
Yeah, it is.
How are you guys doing with this change into fall? I kind of like it. It's crispy outside.
This is the first day I've worn a jacket.
Yeah,
Nice.
I like it.
It's like just below 50 this morning.
Yes, I love the fall in Tennessee.
We'll have to do an episode of, I don't know, the winter cold weather and agency life.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
It is a real
It's
thing.
definitely a real
When you
thing.
guys were young in your 20s, did you guys ever think you'd live in Tennessee?
No.
I never did.
In my 20s, thinking here.
Well, when
You were in Tennessee
You
in
were
your
in
20s.
Tennessee.
I was in Tennessee.
Oh,
in my
you
20s.
moved early, yeah.
But earlier, no.
Yeah.
5 years before that,
It
no.
was never on my radar,
Yeah.
but I'm glad I did. So
I grew up in Queens, New York, so I mean nothing against Queens, but I was always like, I'm out of here.
Really?
I'm not staying.
I grew up in tropical weather most of my life.
yeah,
But what do you guys think about this concept of growing up in, say, sun and nice, comfortable all the time, and then those people who say grew up in Queens or in Michigan and Detroit,
Yeah,
like
Detroit.
this whole like dealing with the weather and resiliency and
well, I lived
Seasonal
in
seasonal
stuff.
I lived in
Depression.
Southern California for 8 years, where it's always sunny,
Mm-hmm.
almost 300 days, over 300 days a year.
So my
And it
question
actually
is that a
got kinda
good thing or
boring.
bad thing? Yeah.
Well, actually, it kind of got boring a little bit, to be honest with you. I mean, you never plan any event based on the weather because you always just assume you're going to have sun, besides maybe 1 or 2 days a year. But yeah, growing up in Detroit, where you have to battle the weather specifically and get to work and snow and ice, it does make things a little bit more tough, for sure. It
And
adds
everyone's
other
doing it
elements.
together,
Yeah,
right?
and everybody does it together, but it does an extra element. And then the lack of sun in Detroit come around February, people are really gloomy. I was always really gloomy. Like I'm waiting for the rebirth of spring. So
I agree. Yeah, battling the weather. It's something I literally, I grew up thinking, why would you choose to battle the weather
Right.
when you can choose not to battle the weather
yeah,
and save 2 hours a day in shoveling snow?
yeah. I don't know. And
That was my question.
for
all the
those
time.
who don't know, typically we don't have much snow here in Nashville. Maybe a few snow showers, a winter that might stack up and then melt by 10 a.m. But we really don't drive in snow or too much ice.
Yeah, when it snows, everything shuts down.
But it's an
Kinda like-
it's an
kinda like
interesting
snow day.
phenomenon to me. Is like you guys grew up in that, so it's probably not that big a deal. But when I first moved here, like 20 years ago, come February, March, I was just over it. I was done. I'm like,
Oh,
this is-
times that by 10
this
in
is like-
Detroit.
Because you'd never done it before.
Yeah, like this is hell. Like
Yeah.
literally,
Really?
like I am so done with the cold weather. Being inside, no
Yeah.
sunshine. But then after say 10, 15 years, you just kind of finally acclimate to it. I just wonder like what that is about us as human beings.
I was actually the opposite way.
Really?
Yeah,
like
no,
it's got hot here.
No. I was happy about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No.
Grass
It
is
was a
greener.
huge upgrade from. And I
Yeah.
actually lived in upstate New York for 2 years, right before I moved here. And so, if anyone knows anything about Buffalo, the Buffalo Bills,
Yeah.
right near Canada, it's. I think it's one of the gloomiest places. Definitely in the U.S., right? It's got the lake effect snow, and it snows 9 months out of the year, and it's precipitating. I don't know, something like 80% of the time.
Wow.
So yeah, no, it was. I remember I broke down. I was shaking my fist at the heavens one day. It's like, stop the snow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, enough about the weather.
literally.
Yeah, literally, we're really getting old.
Yeah.
Today we want to talk about delegation. As we've been talking a lot about scaling agencies in your business and even solopreneurs, you start from just say a contractor and you start to get more. You find out, well, you have to hire somebody. But specifically in agency life, as owners, as managers, you've got to learn how to delegate. Otherwise, you're either going to burn out or you're never going to be able to scale appropriately. Is that something, I know, Ken, you've talked a lot about it, and I know, Brad, in your agency, what's the challenges for you, and or did you have to learn it on the fly, trial and error, or was that something that you really felt like, okay, if I'm going to grow a business, I'm going to really learn how to delegate appropriately?
Are you guys good at delegation? Because I'm not.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's something that many people are great at. I've worked hard to and I continue to work hard at it, but I feel like delegation for most people. Well, I would say this: I feel like delegation goes on typically one extreme or the other, and so based on your personality, you may be, someone that micromanages and has a hard time giving up things, or you might be someone who gives up everything and maybe too much, or maybe doesn't judge the competency of the person or the readiness of that person to do it. And so I think getting the sweet spot is really difficult. And so it's been something that I think is, for me, I've learned a lot about, and you have to delegate effectively in order to scale something, in order to be good at life.
Yeah.
But I have found some questions that, you can ask yourself. I there's some like maybe guidelines of like how to delegate more effectively, because you can't build something that goes beyond you if you can't really delegate effectively, right?
Yeah. Delegation is not only tough, but it takes a lot of guts, because you really have to understand that when you delegate, you might create some risk in your business, especially if the person that's taking it over doesn't do as good a job or doesn't hit a home run on what they're doing. It could affect your business. And so, for me, it really depends on the type of business owner you are. I think there's two different types of business owners. There's the business owners and people who start companies who don't know everything. They don't want to know everything. They just want to lead and be visionaries. And they don't care to get into the minutia, and they don't want it. And so they get other people around them to do all that and to learn and be masters of their business. Those are one type of business or company leaders. The other type are people who I think that are more common are those that start businesses and they're jack of all trades. They're doing every piece of the business, and they're starting small, and they may start with one person themselves, and then they grow and grow and grow. Those are the people, I think, and that's like me, who have a harder time delegating because they've been involved in every single process. They know everything so well in their business. They may even be very good at some things, but you got to let it go to grow. That's a good phrase for that. You got to let it go to grow.
Key takeaway today.
Yeah. And so I think those are some of the challenges. And,
it's a new t-shirt, Ken.
Yeah, right. New t-shirt.
I always tell myself in my back of my mind is today I'm going to fire myself.
Can I adjust that?
I'm going to fire myself
Can I adjust
today.
it?
Yeah.
If you're going to grow, you got to let it go.
You got to let it go. Yeah. So I always tell myself, it's funny. I tell myself like almost daily, I need to fire.
What do you tell yourself?
I need to fire myself. I fire myself. You're fired.
Yes. No, you're right.
You're fired. And I say, thank you. That's so funny.
No, that's a great point. That's a great point, because I have.
Are you guys making fun of me?
No. I'm being serious.
I think you're making fun of me.
Definitely not.
Sometimes.
Yeah. I'm very easily made fun of. It's fun.
One technique is to fire yourself from the various jobs that you do.
Yes.
And like, so if you're coming from, you need to scale beyond something, you need to grow bigger than yourself. If you're coming in that direction, one technique is to, all right, figure out all the different jobs that you do, and figure out what the things that only you can do are, and then fire yourself slowly from the other things. But, delegation, a lot of people, I think that they think that it speeds things up. I think it obviously does, but I actually think it slows things down at the beginning if you do it right, because it really is the concept of not doing something yourself and taking the time to write it, kind of like process it, document it, and then teach it to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's where
it's slower.
We've talked about this in other podcasts, but processes are really to the key to delegation, because it's very difficult. If you've been doing something for the last 15 years, it's very difficult to get somebody to do something without a process. Even if they know, if you're trying to find someone internally to take over something, maybe it's new to them, the process will help them. If they don't have a process, if you don't have a process in place that just works, it's very difficult it's harder to delegate.
Do you guys think there's a difference, and maybe we should define this, between delegation and outsourcing? And are they the same or are they different? Like, how do you define, I'd love to hear both of you guys, how do you define what you delegate versus what I outsource with a small o, meaning if there's something I don't want to do, or I'm not good at, or I'm too busy, is that the same as delegation, or is it the same as hiring someone? You know, we talked about this, hiring contractors to do things that maybe, you know, explainer videos or things like that. Is that the same as delegation?
I don't call hiring a role delegation. I really think of delegation as taking your current team and giving certain folks responsibilities that may be, you know, maybe in line with what they do every day, but it could also be some additional things that they do that they haven't done before. So I think, to me, delegation is really more sharing those deeper responsibilities that's hard to find. Like, you might not have somebody hired specifically for that role, but you're going to give that role that they're responsible. And it may just be, you know, 3% of their job to do. But to me, that's delegation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, because in some ways, I think outsourcing is a form of delegation in some ways, right? Because, you know, in an easier, maybe a more, a little bit of an easier, maybe more defined way of delegating something is hiring a professional who already does that thing, right? So if part of your job is, you know, doing some of the accounting in your business, you probably shouldn't be doing that unless you're an accountant. I don't know. I think a form of delegation could be, you know, bringing in someone who's outsourced, who's a professional who does that. I do think that, to Brad's point, the art of delegation and the personal growth attached to it doesn't probably come from outsourcing usually, because delegation is this like internal thing. Like, if you can do that really effectively as a person in your life, like not just in business, you become really good, because rather than, you know, I think most people think of delegation as divvying out tasks and ordering people and telling people what to do. Right. And then, like, the 4-hour work week probably messed it up a whole bunch too. Like, so,
you work more than 4 hours a week?
Well, I don't, but I'm just kidding. Yes, I do.
Have you ever been around worked for or been around like really good CEOs, or observed them? They're masters at delegation. And I think the whole process of, like you said, like doling out tasks and say, hey, go do this is not delegation. It's like, it's building leadership. A team, it's leadership, it's encouraging people. And I've seen men and women who are masters at this, like high-level CEOs. If you've ever been in their presence, they're able to like command attention and say, okay, here's the vision. Now this is what I want you to do. This is how I want it done. This is how, you've got the tools to do it. If you don't have the tools, let me know. I'll get them for you. This is what you're going to do. By the end of the meeting, you just kind of like with your jaw open going, wow, that was really cool. Like they were able to take this monumental task that, for me, I might be able to do a piece of it, but they just tore the whole thing apart and they put the right people in place and it was going to be successful.
I think that to delegate, you really have to, it's good to have a mentor or somebody like what you're saying, like we've all probably done the corporate world for a while, and there's always, in the corporate world, it's easier to find mentors because there's probably a lot of people, a bit large, more people, employees in an organization, bigger organization, and so it's always good to have some type of mentor that you're like, you know what, this is who I see doing that. Like we've all seen people like you just explained, right? Probably in some form or fashion. We're like, how do they do that? Like, how do they seem to do that so flawlessly? And it's definitely harder than what it looks.
So like one key element to delegation is being able to trust
Yes.
the people that you're delegating to, which means, again, I do think it all comes back to you as a person.
It takes guts, like I said.
But you got to
it's
find the right
risk.
people.
Yeah, it is. And it's most of the
Right?
stuff that I tend to delegate nowadays is stuff that I feel like it's not someone I'm hiring for. It's a real specific trust factor, to be honest with you. I trust you with this because of like it's a financial role or something that's going to really could, if you made a mistake, it could cost our company.
Well, step one is finding the right people.
Yeah.
I think, and that can be, I mean, if you want to scale and you want to delegate, you need to hire or have people that are trustworthy and competent.
Yeah.
Right? Like capable of taking the role, the things that you want them to do.
Here's the three things that I struggle with delegation that I try to overcome. Number one, will they not do something correctly and cause a risk to our company?
Yes.
Right. Number two would be, would I overwhelm them? And could they really handle that amount of work? And sometimes I always feel like I'm trying to always gauge when I feel like I'm putting too much on somebody. And then number three, is it something that I enjoy doing in the business? Like there's certain, and that's another struggle that I have is because I kind of came up through the creative ranks and I really did a lot more of that early on in my business. I don't do as much anymore, but there's that part of me that always wants to do that because it kind of has a natural fulfillment for me. I even tell my folks, I'm like, if you see me getting too engaged in that, please tell me. Like, tell me to go take a hike because I want to participate in that. And I know I don't really have the bandwidth to do that sometimes. And I'm also maybe not the best at it anymore.
Yeah, I think you have to prepare in advance and build a team with delegation in mind. I don't think it's something you just wake up tomorrow and go, oh, I need to start delegating things. I think you have to really plan for that and hire for that and know that if you're going to grow at a level or scale that you want to scale, you need to prepare in advance of, okay, who are the people that I'm going to need in my organization? What type of qualities, what type of personality to be able to handle that. And I think that forethought is a lot of it, don't you think?
I would say it really starts there, in my opinion. You need to have people who are competent and trustworthy enough to take on things that that you currently do, which if you're doing them right now, it's probably because at some level you only trust yourself to do it, right? And so like there has to be a high level of trust. And I don't think that comes immediately either. Like, so I think the forethought and really thinking about this, like, okay, so one of the things that anyone listening to, I would say is, something to think about is like, is there something capping your the growth to where you think that you're supposed to be purposefully or, in your life or in your business? And if that's the case, then part of that is delegation, I think. And delegation, I do think, is like, when done well, it's an art that you need to pursue. That's what we're saying, right? And so if it's an art that you need to pursue, then you need to think about it in like forward thinking, like you're saying. And I would say the first element is you have to delegate to people, so you need good people. And I don't think you can hire someone and on day one, you can obviously give them things, but you need to be able to actually really, you're going to do more work in the first period of time this is what I've always been taught by some good mentors, that you kind of need to micromanage for their purpose, like for the first period of time, right? So like not in a way of in a critique or criticism way, but more in a way of like, hey, here are the roles that you have, here are the systems, and here's the documentation, here's how you do it, and I'm going to give you quick feedback, like very, very close quick feedback early on, so that you kind of learn. before I step back. Because if you just give it and step back, then it doesn't work. And also, and so I think it takes time, and that is, hey, if you're busy, see, that's the challenge. If you're already overwhelmed and you're already like capped, the way to get out of that, if you don't have some of those things in place, is actually a little bit more work first, and before it kind of pays dividends and actually reduces your load.
Yeah.
Would you say so?
Absolutely. It does take time. Again, the training, I think, is key, and checking in. Once you feel comfortable, though, I think you gotta let that person roll with it and do it, and let that person do it in their own way.
That's good
too, because I think that's sometimes you'd be surprised. I've surprised myself many times because I kind of trained somebody and they're like, then they switched it a little bit, but they're like, oh, this is better. This is a better process. And it wasn't just their process, but it actually was a better process overall. So give props to people, let them shine, and trust in people, because people do want to do good for you. They want to build your business. And if you let them, give them some freedoms to do what you've asked them to do, they might surprise you.
A friend of mine always says that you should make sure people's area of influence matches their area of responsibility. So what that means is, a lot of times you maybe without even thinking about it, give people the responsibility and the pressure to do something that they don't actually have the ability to fully influence. Like, you may be in control of a part of that thing, and so now, there's not really a smooth path. You have to come back to you and ask, hey, is this the way you want it done? Like, a little bit of that is fine, but at scale, that really isn't challenging. And so this idea of that's something I've always kept in my head, as best as possible with people, is the expectation of someone matching the ability for them to actually get that thing done.
That's good. One of the first, we should probably talk about some of the first steps of how to delegate effectively. And I think, there was a big push, and there still is. A lot of people have virtual assistants. A lot of people have, assistants at that level, which I think if you're running a business or trying to scale a business, that's probably the first thing you should start with, is get some sort of assistant that can help you with the things that are not hard to delegate. They're probably easy, the easiest things to delegate, and then start to grade them and go from there. So for instance, responding to your emails or checking voicemail or, sending out things or whatever it is that you need that an assistant can be up to speed really quickly. Or would you agree that that's probably the first place to get into, quote, delegation?
Yeah, you've probably, I know there's a guy in town that is right here named Michael Hyatt, and he's kind of big he's a sort of big leadership voice, right, and does a lot with, at least traditionally, he had done a lot with virtual assistants and those kind of things, right? And I think I learned from him originally the idea of starting with something like a virtual assistant is actually a really good one, because it kind of it forces you to document something for somebody that is process oriented, and then hand it over to them. It's sort of in a safe environment, because sometimes when you hire just a full-time person that's just sitting on the side, it ends up getting really messy. Actually the discipline of, okay, I need this person, I'm going to hire this VA, and they're going to do whatever, this one thing for me, and here's how you do it. That kind of gets you into the discipline of doing that. So I do think that's a good start. I had personally, I did that a few years ago, and it kind of forced you to, start writing things down, and that's actually the first step of really effectively doing that.
It's good. It's good. How about you, Brad? Did you ever work with an assistant, a virtual assistant, anything like that?
I've had assistants, but I've never had you're talking about an outside virtual assistant. No, I've never had an outside assistant. I just, for me personally, I've always had this stigma that there's no way I could have them. I'd be doing more work trying to get the information delivered to them and then getting them up to speed than than for me to do it. It's that thing, right? It's like, if you want it done, you're going to do it yourself.
Yeah. Let's work on this.
But the problem with that is that it does fill up your day and your time, and it's doesn't allow you to do stuff that only you can do. And I think that's one thing too that we need to. I like to talk a little bit too about how can you decide what are the things that only you can do.
That's what I was going to say next.
How do you decide that?
That's the next decision, is like, ultimately, even if it's not what you do right now, like ultimately, what is it that only you should be doing? So it starts with like, what is it that you can do? And then really ultimately the question is, what is it in your business or in your life or whatever that thing is, what is it that you should be doing, like long term? You know, I think I've got a business coach that beats me down with that question a lot. And you think, and then the truth is you kind of like keep digging and you don't, and you get to like the root. So it's worth some chewing on, at least in my experience. But once you decide that, you may be doing things that you shouldn't be doing, but that's okay. Now you know kind of know what you have to delegate. You
talked about your business coach. You talk to somebody on a regular basis that pours into you and listens to you. Did they give you any guidance on like, hey Ken, you need to quit doing this, or this is? Did they help you with that? Is that a good tool? A good
business coach resource? Absolutely.
For you in that area?
Yeah, absolutely.
For delegation?
Yeah. It kind of so my personality, I tend to I'm fairly good at picking things up. And so I could, let's say this, it's going to sound incorrect, but like I could in theory, like do a lot of the things myself. And that's the trick that your mind plays on you. And so sometimes having maybe the ability to pick things up, or a lot of knowledge about a lot of things, or a little bit of knowledge about a lot of things, is a bad thing for you, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's not that hard. I could do that, or that's not hard. Yeah, I'm going to pay for this. Like then you end up, if you have that scarcity mindset, just kind of, you end up being the only person. Sometimes the lack of belief that you can do something, the ability that you can do something, actually is a good thing in your favor. But for me, like I tend to, my default would be, I can do things if I need to. I don't necessarily want to, but I know I can do something if I need to. But sometimes for me, like if I get caught into a cycle, or I'm under a lot of pressure, I will retract, at least by default. So I try to combat that a little bit, but I will retract by default, like inward, and tend to do more myself. Anyway, a business coach or another mentors will help you see that and challenge you on that when that's happening. And so I would say these days it's rare that happens to me, but I think a big part of that is because you have outside influence.
Yeah. I'd like to hear a little bit too from you, Bob. I know you've been in different roles and as a business owner and working for other companies. When do you find that you are in your career the most free to delegate, and when you're not? The reason I say that is because I know I've been in corporate agencies and stuff, and I know sometimes I've seen people who actually, they have roles they're constantly delegating, but they're not doing anything themselves. Like they literally do it so that they can go play golf every day.
Right.
And that's not what we're talking about here. And those, we're talking really more about folks who really lead agencies, and it's really for the growth of your business. But for you in your career, when did you most delegate, and when was it easier, I guess?
Or when didn't it work?
Yeah.
No, I mean both, like.
One of the things we haven't talked about here is, and it's probably part 2 of delegation, is like really identifying like when what you want to delegate, what you should delegate, and when, it's would, should, and want, right? So what do I want to do with my time, right? Like what brings me the most passion? What am I passionate about? What brings me the most joy? Like what do I feel like, gets me up in the morning with agency life? To me, that's the thing that maybe I shouldn't delegate. But we all know that there's things that, you have to do that you don't love. And then there's things that you should do that maybe you don't, or that you delegate. And I think that game in these different environments, I'm answering your question the long way around here, is really what you have to figure out. And that takes time. And I think we started this discussion saying, and Ken said, well, I'm not really good at it. And it's hard. And we're all trying to figure out what to delegate, what not. I think in a corporate environment that I've been in, it's easy to delegate because you've got resources, you've got staff, and you've got processes. So you're really forced to delegate because they've already scaled and they're already at a corporate level, say, if any more than, say, 20, 30 employees. Anything bigger than that, you've got processes in place. So if you're in a role, chances are you're able to delegate. It's already set up for you. Okay, this person does this person does this. And in one sense, that's really great and it's comforting. In the other sense, the downside of that is, well, what if you want to do something differently and you want to be creative, or you want to create a new system or process? You're restricted, right? Well, we don't really do that, or it's going to take time to change that. So you're kind of stuck delegating, which is not a bad thing for some people, but for those of us who are creative and visionaries, it can be. And then in an entrepreneurial, in your own environment, we have what we're talking about, where you're like, I better create some processes. Otherwise, if I get 4 more clients next month or next year, I'm not going to be able to manage this. So I guess for me, it's just finding what I should be doing and I want to be doing, not what I could be doing. And I think that's the balance for me, is always being like, yeah, I could do that. I could start that. I could do this. But really, what gives me passion? And if you're listening to this and you're like, none of it gives me passion, you should probably find something else to do with your life.
Yeah, if it's just making money, money is easy to come by.
Yeah, and so finding
that
nugget of what I've learned is, what is the thing that the client or the prospective client says, I want Brad on the phone call because only Brad can bring this. And, Ken is the guy for this thing. I think we get to a point in our career where it kind of hits us on the head and we realize, oh, that's what I'm really good at. And it's usually the thing that 9 times out of 10, it's usually the thing that you really like to do and you're passionate about. And that's where I would say you go down that road and you're like, that's what you don't delegate. All the other stuff, even if you can, even if you kind of like it, but it gets overwhelming when you get too much of it, that's the stuff that I think you need to start delegating, and find that one thing or 2 things that are like, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what gets me up in the morning. And I realize other people are saying the same thing. They're saying, Bob, you're really good at this. That's what you probably don't want to outsource.
So
or delegate.
Maybe we can go around a little bit, but like for you, can you share, what are some of those things for you? Like, what are those things that you are passionate about, and where that intersects with your skills too, maybe, or whatever? Like, what are those things that you keep versus you delegate?
I think seeing the big picture and creating a strategy and a vision for clients of saying, hey, and connecting dots. I think for me, connecting dots is really exciting because I can apply that to different areas of my life. Being able to see, here's where you are, here's what's happening over here, here's a new development, here's what you've done. A little bit of like data, a little bit of entrepreneurship, a little bit of kind of visionary thinking, and you start to put all that together. And I find many times the clients will say, oh, I've never thought about that. Or, oh, that's what we're doing wrong. Or here's what we need to be shifting. So connecting the dots and also explaining it for a client and making it clear, clarifying vision and strategy. I think those are some areas that I've found I don't need to be I don't need to be delegating. I need to be, that's the thing that gets me excited.
What do you look first to delegate? Or is that in your head?
The things that, number one, the things I hate, obviously, the things I'm not good at. And that takes a lot of self-awareness to be able to say, maybe I thought I was good at those things at one point, but really I suck at them, or there's someone that's better. I think that's the hard part too, is realizing, like you said, I can do these things and I'm okay at it, but there's somebody that could do it just as good as I, and chances are better. So I need to delegate that. Yeah. And the thing, I think too, I don't know how you guys feel about this. I think this is probably, there's two sides to this coin, is what are the things that really like stress you out and give you anxiety?
Yeah.
There's stuff we have to do as business owners that we hate. I get that. But if there's something that's just keeping you up at night and you just like get sweats when you get to that part of your day, outsource your stress. There's no reason for that.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, and on that point, I mean, there have been those things for me, and to me, when I really analyze what's going on, like the solution is finding someone who I feel safe in with their competency in that matter. And I think the stress comes from not having that, like feeling that you're the only one in your life that can really do that thing, and that scares you because you're not capable of doing that thing, or you don't believe that you are. Right? That's what's stressing you out. There's a lack of.
There's a little bit of
there.
humbleness too that has to come with that.
Yeah,
like, of course, say like, hey, I know I've been acting like I'm really great at this, but I'm not, or I hate it, or it stresses me out, and be willing to hand that over to someone, and be like, I'm gonna let this go and let you do this, whatever it may be.
That's good. What about you, Ken?
I think kind of like Bob, I think what I enjoy are big picture sort of like vision type things. I like challenging the things that we perceive as boundaries, in any way. That's the kind of stuff that excites me. So, and when it comes to business, I think I like the purposeful visionary side of what are we doing, and the excitement of what this thing can and will become. Excuse me. That's what excites me. In line with that, I don't know. You guys have done the disc test? Mm-hmm. Yeah? No?
Yeah, it's been a while.
I couldn't tell you what it is.
Yeah. Okay.
No. I couldn't tell you what I am. I've done it.
Oh, you can tell you. Okay, yeah. So I'm like a DIDC, like 99D, and then like my I and my C are basically like really close to each other, like very, very high, like 60. So I can kind of go the direction of, like, I'm trying to put a label on this, like aggressive engineer or whatever, if I needed to, that DC. Mm-hmm. And so systems when they pertain to getting to the goal of like a certain scale, like to achieve a vision, are things that sometimes I enjoy. I don't enjoy them for the sake of them. But I can design decently, I would say, maybe at least to get things going. I'm not the best at it. And that's been part of, just kind of, I guess what I do. I try and delegate these days. My goal is to be delegating as much of anything that's not specifically vision related, to delegate off. And that's hard, but that's kind of like my goal. Not because I don't want to do it, just because I think that you've got to have someone in each seat of the bus. I don't know if you've read Good to Great. It's, to me, the best business book out there. But you've got to have someone in every seat, I think, for the team that, you think of what kind of team you need, and then you got to have people in those seats. So if you got someone doing a bunch of different things, it doesn't work. And so you have to figure out how to split up the work. Yeah. And so, yeah.
What about you, Brad?
Boy, I don't know. I think the things that bring me joy also can be kind of hard for a business leader. I like to innovate, and I like to create as well. And so the innovation and I think that's one thing that I really am drawn to. The challenge with that sometimes is I become like the wizard behind the curtain, and it's hard because I kind of digress in my business and not as forward. It can be great for a little time, but I've got to kind of switch that up a lot. Another thing that I really enjoy doing in my business is, I really feel like I understand like human behavior, especially in marketing and advertising. Like I really think through, like I feel what a consumer would feel. And I look at it that from a journey standpoint. So I can see not just the beginning of that customer journey, but I can see it every way down the road. So I'm always kind of thinking a little bit more forward of like, did you think about that? Did you think about this? What about that? What about when they get to this part? What's the consumer going to think? And most people they're like, well, I'm on the first stage right now. I don't know what they're going to think at that point. And so, oops, sorry about that. I'm destroying things here. That's one thing I'm really good at too, destroying things, taking things apart. So those are the things that I like to do. Sometimes they're also kind of not the best for, I think, the business. So I always struggle with that a bit, and I found a good hybrid where I can do that, and at the same time also make sure that I'm not hiding behind the curtain too long. Because I do think that there is innovation. There has to be innovation, and a lot of my staff just is focusing on getting things done for the day, right? They're the task at hand, whatever is on their plate, they're thinking about. And so I really enjoy and I like being able to step back, but I also know that I have to clear my head. So if delegating just gives me more mental health and more time, then that's when I can actually think about the business. Because if I'm just doing the daily stuff and in the grind, it's really difficult for me to have long-term vision.
I mean, as you're talking, like I'm actually in the thick of this right now in an area of our business. Like, so I know for a few episodes we talked about content strategy, for instance, or what does agency content look like, and we have done a lot of that. We're passionate about I am about a certain type of angle and a certain type of thing, and so it's not just noise. At least we're not making it in the way of noise. And so there's fuel to talk about things, but there's only so much time in the day to do those things. And we've built a schedule that has a lot of content going out, especially now more than ever. And we're launching some new initiatives and things. And so we just had I'm involved in each one of those right now, and several other people are too. And so the key is like, how do you scale something that is like the soul of a brand, in a way. That may sound too heavy, but like, it's not as easy as like shipping packages or those kind, but it's more, now you have to scale a voice, or you have to scale, something else. Yeah, so this stuff, we're talking about this on a day that, I'm trying to figure that out. I don't know exactly how to do that well right now. But I know that myself, and a couple other people are just, overstacked with the amount of stuff that needs to get done, and that usually when if you get overwhelmed for too long, or if you have too much to do for too long, and your to-do list never ends, you end up getting burned out. The quality of your work goes down, all that kind of stuff, and so you have no space to breathe and ability to work, so I understand. I feel you on that. And that's why I think this topic is something that it's just a constant pursuit, because you might think you have a certain area of your business refined and scaled and delegated. And then, that next initiative that you take on, you got to redo that whole thing.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I've found that I've delegated stuff now for 5 to 10 years, and that I was kind of an expert at it. I haven't done and touched in 10 years, and it's harder for me when I need to, every so often, you have to go back and roll up your sleeves and help out. but I can't sometimes even help out all that well anymore because I've delegated for so long. I literally am not. I'm just kind of out of touch with it now. I know it just gets done, and I don't think much about it anymore. And but I think that's okay, and I think that's good. Like, you know, as you grow your business and you're leading your business, you're never going to know every piece of your business, how to do it 100%. You might know the concept of it. You might know why it's important in your business, but you may not be able to step in any further and actually help out at that granular level.
Do you guys
and I think that's good.
Do you guys use any specific tools for tasks, for delegation? I mean, I guess we would be getting into project management and task management, but is there something that's helped you in your delegation?
One tool that I think has helped a lot, it's not really a traditional tool, is a personality test. Like, is the person, you know, again, like, I feel like we've done a lot. We talked about a lot of the different personality tests here, but the DISC test is one that's really simple and it's very practical for work life. You know, that's one we use for everybody, and it just helps figure out, like, if someone's personality, what they love, what they're maybe more naturally doing, is in line with the thing that they're going to be doing. Because if that's in line, you have a greater chance of, you know, not having burnout or something like that. Or
if you're delegating something that stresses you out, you don't want to delegate it to someone that stresses them out.
You want to delegate to someone that loves it.
Yeah.
Right. That's the goal.
Right.
Well, I think that's the key, is that you talked about tools and stuff, but I think that the greatest tool you have is a human resource. It's an employee who is actually just built to handle those things, and maybe they're project managers, maybe they're, you know, that can just help with other delegation within your agency, making things sure that the things that you've delegated to everyone, that they're actually overseeing that to make sure also it's getting done. We use different software. We use Asana and some other project management software, but the software itself doesn't do anything. It may ping you and it may, you know, alert you, but the reality is I think it does take a human person who's kind of a project manager for everyone, who's driving the boat a little bit to make sure that, you know, the delegation's getting
something we
done.
try and do is anytime we bring someone on, we try and figure out, okay, they might be good at potentially a lot of different things, but what are their their three main roles, and in order of priority. So not someone shouldn't have necessarily three roles, but like your three areas that you'll be within, you know, up to three. Maybe there's not three. And then in order of priority, and that kind of gives some clarity around, okay, you're going to be in this area, so this is what you're going to be doing. Like, it's clarity on both sides. The other thing that it's really, really effective, just a discipline, is to sit down, the area that you know, first of all, like Bob said, like, you think about what it is that you should be doing, you want to do, but ultimately decide what are the things you're going to delegate, the areas, the actual tasks, the responsibilities you're going to try and fire yourself from. Like, decide on what those are, and then for each one of them, like, write down, as if a robot was going to do it, like the exact process of how you do it. Like, you know, you can start in something that helps us is like just start in like a timeline sort of order. So like, first this happens and this happens and this, but you really kind of codify that. Now you can hand that to somebody. I mean, that's the hard work right there. Like that, it's hard work that people don't want to do. It's not fun. It's kind of annoying. You really have to wrestle with yourself and think of like, how do I, you know, you don't let yourself give yourself the excuse of, oh no, that it can't, you know, that can't be written down. Like, you got to figure out how you automate, like how you write the process down. And that's actually setting, I think, the delegation up for success, because now you kind of have as close to a process, an automated thing as you can, so someone can actually follow at least the steps. So we do that. We try and do that for every area of our business.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, because the more I think about like the passive delegation, I delegate to people that I know will get it done. And you know, you have those people around you have those personalities where you just start, but the challenge with that is you delegate a lot more to them, because you know they're going to be responsible and get it done. And even if, they'll learn it. And the challenge with that sometimes is that you have to try to teach those you're delegating to that maybe they need to delegate some of that onward, right, eventually, and not just hold it all and become this big pond of that you're just constantly putting delegation on, and
well, the only way
they're
you
going to
can
overflow, and they're going to burn out.
It's going to happen with everybody, and you have to teach that. In fact, the only way you can scale as a company is if you scale like organizationally, right? So like working on an org chart, even if you're one person right now, would be something that would be, I would say, it would be really smart, because it kind of gives you, this is what you don't want to do, in my opinion, and because I've done this before and then had to backtrack. You may find that you've got all these people, maybe one, maybe two, maybe a bunch of people on your team that are just really good at being you. So you just say, hey, do this or do that. But then like you're ultimately not building anything that scales. Like you're just, I think in Good to Great is called a guru with a million helpers or something like that. I think that's the late or something like that. But the idea that you're not really building systems, and there's no rhyme or reason to why someone gets something. If there's not, then I think that ultimately your delegation is wasted, because it's because you still are. You have to divvy it out, and no one and people are not sure what their role is. They're sort of like, I help Brad or I help Ken do stuff. That would be, then it won't run without you, right? And so I've been in that situation before, and have had people speak into my life that have taught me otherwise. But
I think we need to be clear for anyone listening who maybe is new in business, or there's the stereotypical Hollywood assistant that follows the boss around, and it's like, give me a coffee, go call this person,
the little notepad,
go fire this person. Right. It's like, that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about someone
that shouldn't exist anywhere. I don't think.
But I think for those
you're
people,
right, it's stereotypical. It's
very stereotypical. And when we start talking about delegation, we're not talking about like lesser than peons that we just get to do our dirty work. We're talking about different skills that work and integrate successfully into a well-oiled organism that works like, your hand can't do what your foot can do, can't do what your eyeballs can do, can't do what your nose can do. And I think that's what you have to realize, is that if you see your company as, this living entity and body that functions, that's how you have to think about it, is like, whatever you're really passionate about as a leader of your company, as a VP, whatever you may be, do that really well, and don't try to be something that you're not, and really integrate closely with those people that are good at those things.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you delegate, you've got to be able to transfer the authority of that thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right, so that person can run, and that's how you can scale. If you've always got to be the authority in that place, and they've got to come and check with you, then that doesn't work. It's kind of like we always talk about our businesses as teams. I don't think people really like think about it literally, but I do think it should be thought of literally. Like if you look at any sports team, like there are different players in different roles that have completely different skill sets and responsibilities, and they're not checking. I mean, they're communicating, but they're not like checking with each other, because they would never win, and they're not all the same either. Right, and so I think that's.
I just had a funny thought about The Office and Michael Scott and Pam relationship. Give me this person on the phone.
Don't be Michael Scott.
How did she become his assistant?
She's the receptionist.
The receptionist.
It's great.
This has been good, guys. I appreciate it. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up this episode on delegation? You guys go and delegate to this morning?
I like the idea of just really be purposeful of what you're doing with your time, and just writing it down and being purposeful when you do delegate, like what you said, Ken. Just really do the work to make sure that you've processed it in a way that if the person you give it to can't do any longer, someone else could just do it, and you already have it kind of documented. And really, it's the why. The why is it?
Yes.
Why is this task important to the business? And if somebody can own that in their heart and they understand why it's important to the business, they will do a good job.
That's great. I agree.
All right, guys. Until next time.
All right. See you.
Bye.